2022 was a good year for us as a church family. We grew, we continue to grow, and we hope in the new year to get to know each other even better. But as I watched that video and the slideshow, I was impressed by several things that I hope as we go through the message today, you'll kind of see tie in together with where we're headed in the new year. God has been incredibly good to us. By the way, huge thank you to Brendan for putting together that video, and for all of you who helped to redo the sound and the lighting and the cameras in the church. When we got the cameras, we wanted to be intentional about making sure we got cameras we could also use to go off-site to record ministry events in the community. So this is the first full-scale time we got to use those cameras. So thank you all for contributing to that project, and we hope to bring you many more service outreach ministries that we can highlight and let you know what's going on so you can get involved and continue to serve our community. Anyway, just a few cool things that happened last year. As I thought about looking to the future, there's a lot of different directions we could go with this message. There's a lot of different angles, a lot of different things. I was this last week as I was working on the sermon, I thought, we could talk about the dysfunction in our government, and I think we finally have a Speaker of the House, maybe, if they didn't roll that back. We could talk about all the conflict and everything going on in the world and all the troubles and things around the world, the wars going on, the people suffering and all the pain and all the horrible things going around us. We could talk about the moral condition of our nation, of our world. But, as I thought about it, I thought, well, there's something more important to talk about than all that. Come with me to the book of Luke. Luke chapter 10, verse 38. Luke chapter 10 and verse 38. Now as they went on their way, Jesus entered a village, and a woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. And she had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to his teaching. But Martha was distracted with much serving, and she went up to him and said, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Tell her then to help me." As I was thinking about this verse so far, I was like, there's all these things going on in the world and all these things in our community and our lives, in our church, all these things that we could be distracted by and have our attention taken elsewhere. And I just wonder if Jesus might have a message for us in this story. Right? Martha was incredibly busy. She was distracted with much serving. Some versions say she was, anxious. Others say she was, just a mess, depending on the translation you read. So she's anxious, she's distracted, she's a mess, and all these things going on. Everything's kind of chaos around her. If you get the picture, Jesus had just shown up from a journey. He's been traveling, and he comes and he shows up at her house. And I don't know back then if they probably didn't call ahead or send a messenger ahead or send a pigeon or however they communicated to let Martha know he was coming. So just imagine Jesus shows up at your house. He's been on a journey and all of a sudden he's there. Imagine the chaos in the kitchen. Imagine the chaos trying to get everything clean because Jesus may see this room or that room and you want to be presentable, right? You can kind of understand where Martha's coming from. She's racing around the house trying to make sure everything's in order, everything's in place, as well as the fact that Jesus and his disciples have been traveling a long ways. They're tired, they're dusty, they're probably hungry, they need to be served. And so she's got all these various things running around in her mind of this long to-do list, and she's distracted and she's doing a lot of good things. And she comes to Jesus and says, "Hey, Jesus, can you tell Mary to get up off the floor and come and help me?" And Jesus responds, "Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things." You are anxious and troubled about many things. I wonder how many times God would look at our churches throughout the years, listen to what we're talking about and listen to our messages and our communication with each other and say, "You are anxious and troubled about many things." You are anxious and troubled about the state of affairs in the church, the finances, the organization. You're anxious and troubled about the condition of society around you, the politics or whatever it is. You're anxious and troubled about many, many things. but one thing is necessary. I love that transition, that word but, right? It tells you, hey, all this that's gone before, it's leading up to something, and now we're going to change things around. All of these things I've distracted, all these distractions, all these worries, all this chaos that has been surrounding you, I want you to turn and look away, but one thing is necessary. Mary has chosen the good portion, which will not be taken away from her. In the midst of all the chaos, now, admittedly, Martha was doing a good work, right? She was preparing the home for Jesus. She was serving Jesus. But in the presence of the God of the universe, she was worried and distracted. And the worry and the distraction is the concern, not the service. The service was being done for Jesus. That's not the issue here. The issue in this story is the worry and the distraction, because it's taken her mind off of the one thing. Is it possible in the way we relate to religion and our society and politics and everything around us that we allow ourselves to become distracted from the one thing that is truly, truly important? There was a discussion on our pastors page on Facebook. They have a North American division group. Actually, it's a worldwide group for Adventist pastors. And so oftentimes we'll be having these discussions that go along. So sometimes they follow a little along politics, and it's interesting to see the different perspectives there. But one person all of a sudden posted this up, and they said, hey, does anybody know where that one quote is that talks about what we should be focusing on and the motivation for why we do what we do? And I was curious, like, what are they talking about? I want to see where this is going. And sure enough, someone else popped up with it and shared it. I was like, man, that's awesome. That is so cool. So I'll tell you the rest of that story in a minute, because I'm guessing you're wanting to see the quote, right? Okay. All right, but first of all, before we go there, I want you to see these four things in this story. Now, I didn't list all the verses up there, but when you look at a story, it's helpful to look at what comes before and what comes after. So Jesus comes and he says, Martha, you're worried and you're distracted, and it's taking your attention off of the one thing that you should be focused on. And then the story immediately after this, Jesus is praying, and the disciples come and ask him, Jesus, teach us to pray. How do we sit at the feet of Jesus? How do we sit at the feet of Jesus like Mary and focus on the one thing that is eternal? The one thing that will not be taken away from us. How do we do that? And I think these stories that surround this story of Martha and Mary and Jesus give us some clues into how to align ourselves with the one thing that is truly important. First of all, we see immediately following this story, Jesus jumps straight into prayer, right? These two stories are connected. There's got to be something there. As we come into this new year, spending more time listening to God. Listening to God. Oftentimes we come to prayer and we think if we do it right, we'll get what we want, or we'll at least get an answer, or at least hear God tell us, no, we won't get what we want, right? And so we struggle and we wrestle with the concept of prayer. I recently was reading and I can't remember the name of the author right now, but they were discussing prayer, and they said, prayer is not about learning to do things the right way. Prayer is not about control is not the right word. That's not the word used. Prayer is not about managing the situation, managing your prayer life. That's not what it's all about, because prayer is about surrender. The question, am I doing prayer right, is approaching prayer from the wrong direction. Prayer is about surrendering and listening more than it is about talking and getting what we want. It's about coming and hearing God speak to us. How much time do we actually spend listening when it comes to prayer? I mean, if you stop and think about it, it's kind of profound. Mary is sitting there at the feet of God in human flesh. God is on earth in human flesh. And so many times, at least for me, I read these stories in the Bible and they become so familiar that I miss out on the profound impact of what is actually going on. The God of all the universe, The God with all wisdom and all power is here in this place, in human flesh, and he's talking. And Mary is sitting there listening to God in human flesh talk. Have you stopped to think about that? We have the opportunity through prayer to stop and to listen to God talk to us. It's not about figuring out the right way to do it in order to make sure things work the way it's supposed to. It's about surrendering ourselves and letting God take the lead. That's truly what prayer is all about. It's coming into a relationship with God. I mean, just put it in these words. If you were to go and you're talking about your marriage, right? And you were to say, my marriage isn't working quite the way I want it to. I need to manage her better. Guys, anybody try that? Ladies, where are they sleeping if they do try something like that, right? I need to control this. I need to do this right to make sure that she does what I want her to do, that she responds the way I want her to respond. Now, we can flip that around. It goes the other way, too, because us guys aren't the only ones guilty of trying to manage or control things to make things the way we want, right? And yet, that's the way we often approach our relationship with God. If I just manage it the right way, if I do it the right way, he'll do what I want. He'll respond the way I want him to respond. This year, let's work at sitting at the feet of God, sitting at the feet of Jesus, and spend more time listening for God to direct and speak to us, surrendering to God. The second thing that ties in with this, if you look at the Gospels, Jesus often does this out in nature, right? Jesus illustrates for us the way to live our lives sitting at the feet of God, and he's often outside when he's praying in nature. He gets away from the chaos and the distraction and the busyness of being surrounded by everyone else, and he gets out in nature and he spends time there sitting with his Father in prayer and nature. The second thing, if we rewind, the very story right before this story is the story of the Good Samaritan. Jesus was actually traveling from Jericho down to Mary and Martha's house. So as he's traveling along, he tells this story about the Good Samaritan. The Good Samaritan is a story above all else about what? Service. Serving regardless of who is needing to be served. And that's really what it boils down to. When we serve those around us, we are following in the footsteps of Jesus, if you will. We are connecting with Jesus as he lived his life and as he speaks into ours. You see, Martha's issue wasn't the serving again. It was the worry and the distraction that crowded out the realization in her mind that God was with us there in that place. And then we see that all the way through these stories, Jesus is socializing, right? He's sitting down at a dinner feast. He's coming and he's getting together with a bunch of tax collectors for one of their parties. All the way through, Jesus is socializing, mingling with people. And then he invites them to come into a saving relationship with himself. He invites them to step in and interact in a saving relationship where they follow in his footsteps, where they also can come and sit at the feet of Jesus. Now, I want to stop for a second. Rewind back to watching the videos. The year in review and then the video that Brennan put together for us, the Good Tidings boxes. How many of these 4 elements do you see found in our church last year? The whole video is highlighting one after the other, after the other, after the other of these. Now, this was not manufactured. I didn't handpick these to put it together. It was really cool. It was like an aha moment. Hey, we have been following in the footsteps of what God would have us do as a church family. God is calling us to do what we've been doing, and he has been blessing, and we've been growing because of it. We have been following in the footsteps of Jesus, praying together, serving our community together, socializing with each other and with people from our community, and then the baptisms, inviting people into a saving relationship with Jesus. Here's the quotes. In looking at what we're supposed to be focused on and what we're not supposed to be focused on. mind, character, and personality, do not talk of the iniquity and wickedness that are in the world, but elevate your minds and talk of your Savior. When you see the iniquity all around you, it makes you all the more glad that He is your Savior and we are His children. Did you catch that? We're not supposed to be focused and talking on all the problems and the iniquity and the sin around us in the world. We're supposed to be focused on our Savior. Here's the other one. The shortness of time. This is another really extremely interesting one. The shortness of time is urged as an incentive for us to seek righteousness and to make Christ our friend. This is not the great motive. I often get asked this question. Why don't you preach more about all the horrible things that are going on to motivate people to get ready for Christ's coming? Common question throughout my ministry in an Adventist context, right? Because we're Seventh-day Adventists. We believe in the second coming. So why aren't we focused on telling everybody more about the bad things that are going on to get them ready? And, well, this last week, 2 weeks ago, I got this quote. I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. The shortness of time, the nearness to the second coming is urged as an incentive for us to seek righteousness and to make Christ our friend. This is not the great motive. This is not what should be motivating us to live like Christ. It savors of selfishness. After all, I mean, it's more about, hey, like hellfire insurance, right? Fire insurance for escaping the wrath and all the problems and things are going on. It's sort of self-centered. It is necessary that the terrors of God... Is it necessary? Excuse me. It makes all the difference in the world the way those two words read. Is it necessary that the terrors of the day of God be held before us to compel us through fear to right action? This not ought to be, and these last three words, Jesus is attractive. Jesus is attractive. Jesus is attractive. There's a theme that runs through all of these things. Martha said, get Mary busy. And Jesus says, Mary has chosen the one thing. At the end of this quote, it boils down to this one thing. Jesus is attractive. He's sufficient. He's enough. And if that weren't enough for us, come with me to Paul. Paul closes this off. He says, 1 Corinthians 2, verse 1. Now, Paul's been traveling, right? He's on his missionary journeys. He's been preaching the gospel, traveling all over, and he comes down here, and he's preached in Athens, right? And there in Athens, he's coming up the intellectual elite of the world. The intellectual elite of the world are there, and he's trying to engage them, and he's trying to bring them around and show them Christ. And so he goes through that sitting at the intellectual seat of the world, and now he's continuing on in his travels, and he comes here to Corinth. He's been ministering, he's been stoned, all this chaos has been going on around him. He's got these enemies trailing on after him, the Jews, right? He's been combating the whole circumcision thing, and all these things he's been writing about and fighting about and trying to deal with, and finally he comes here in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 1, he refocuses himself and he says, when I came to you, brothers, did not come proclaiming to you the testimony of God with lofty speech or wisdom. This is not what I'm here to do. But notice verse 2. For I decided to know nothing among you except Jesus Christ and Him crucified. Jesus Christ and Him crucified. Paul refocused and recentered his ministry on the one thing. Jesus is attractive. Jesus is sufficient. His grace, His love, His mercy is sufficient for you and me. If God left heaven, came down to this earth, and in the midst of our worry and our busyness and distraction, said, there is one thing I want you to focus on, then church family, I think that 2023 should be a year where we focus on the one thing. Where we focus on Jesus Christ and Him crucified. Where we continue to do all these things we've been doing, walking in the footsteps of Jesus, serving our community, praying together, studying together, coming together and worshiping together, but in it all, blocking out all the worry and all the distractions and focusing on the one who is the way, the truth, and the life. So this year, I want to invite you to come on a 2023 journey with me, sitting at the feet of Jesus.